happened?
Because he wasn't here all past week and nothing really big happened. It's like if he
I
wasn't
think
even
it'll
here.
change dramatically. I don't know. When Mr. Clark resigns, I'm leaving because I think the school's gonna have a big change.
Like what? What do you think is going to happen?
Like it used to be, you know,
Well, what was that?
drugs, a lot of drugs, a lot of fights, a lot of violence going on in the school, and you know, it's a shame because Mr. Clark has helped a lot of students on a lot of things, especially he helped me a lot.
Do you think people were out to get Joe Clark, to get him out of here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Why?
The board started all this. They should leave him the hell alone. And excuse my language, and the board should leave him the hell alone. Is this cool? And he brought the school from shame all the way to fame, honey, and they should leave him alone. That's my opinion.
How about you? We've been avoiding you here. Step on up.
Yeah,
Come on, step
go
on
ahead,
in
Maria.
here. Maria, what do you think?
Well, I think that it's messed up kicking him out because the way he put the school, he got it clean and everything. Now, if he leaves, it's going to be the same way it was before, and we don't want that. It's going to go crazy again.
Well, Jim, we have some tape also. Joe was talking about, wait, I should say that. You guys, thank you very much. I appreciate you talking to it. They need to get back to it. But Jim, coming up in a little bit, we'll show you some tape. Joe Clark will talk about that assembly that they had here about a month ago, and he's saying that he was framed in that deal, and it was one of the catalysts to bring about today's announcements. We'll come back in just a little bit here in Paterson, New Jersey, outside of Eastside High School.
All right, Larry, thank you very much. And here in New York City, we've got still more on the Eastside High School story. With us now are school board members from Paterson, Judy Moran, last year the school board president, and Donna Brightman, school board member as well. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, Joe Clark has the support of the kids out at Eastside High, but now you're not too much in favor of his record as principal there. Why not?
Well, in essence, we feel that although Mr. Clark, when he came to Eastside, restored discipline to the building, once discipline is restored, the educational climate obviously should change, and it should come full circle. In essence, what we expected was educational scores to rise, kids to succeed, dropout rates to decline. That has not occurred.
And Donna Brightman, I take it you would agree with that?
That's correct. I feel that Joe Clark has outlived his usefulness at Eastside High School. He is more interested in going on the TV circuit than he is on educating the kids, and I think it's time for him to move on.
Let me ask you about that. What's on the surface of it seemed to be a very bizarre play to put on by a high school where they showed young men in G-strings. How much responsibility do you think he bears for that particular show?
Well, the principal is the educational leader for the building. He's the manager of the building. So consequently, he is really responsible for anything that occurs within his building. I mean, technically, that is it. Whether he was responsible for booking in the show, so according to Mr. Floyd, Mr. Clark was well aware of the show, and there seems to be, a conflict in terms of what Mr. Clark believes and what Mr. Floyd, who is the producer of the show. And that came across at the school board meeting.
How could we're taking a look at it now, how could a review such as this be produced in a high school?
It's inappropriate. Obviously inappropriate.
To say the least. How did it happen? How could something like this go on?
They, for the week leading up to the events of the premiere for Lean On Me, Joe Clark had a series of assemblies, and this was part of the entertainment for the week.
Now he apparently has gone. He has said he's going to take a sabbatical and not come back and take a job with the Bush administration in Washington. What happens now to Eastside High School? What's the future?
Well, first of all, he can't take a sabbatical unless it's for educational purposes, and it has to be approved by the board. So we have to get to step one first.
And what's your feeling about how the board is going to vote on that?
That should be an interesting occurrence because probably by the time that comes forward, there'll be a new school board sitting. There's an election April 4th, and they will take their seats probably around April 13th and be sworn in. I really can't say how that would go, but in essence, the policies are in place. If indeed it's a sabbatical, then the board needs to vote on it. If it's a paid sabbatical, it has to be educational. If it's a sick leave, a doctor's note would have to be presented, and he could not be employed anyplace else.
Okay, well, we'll have to find out what happens. Well, thank you very much, Judy Moran, for joining us, Donna Brightman, members of the school board in Paterson, New Jersey. The time now is 8:20, and another story that we've been following. Principal Joe Clark has decided to take a sabbatical from Paterson, New Jersey's Eastside High School. Clark made national headlines for his unusual methods of discipline, and a movie was made about him called Lean on Me. Principal is now taking some time off, and that's after coming under fire for a performance at the school which featured men in G-strings. Clark says he was framed.
I do believe that I was set up. I believe that it was a sabotage by Eric Floyd, and I would not be surprised if it was implemented by some members on that council. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they paid this guy off to sabotage me and to embarrass me, in view of the fact, of course, that I was not even here. I was in Los Angeles taking one personal day, and this thing happened. And might I state to you very quickly that within hours, the entire nation had the tape of that particular show.
Well, Clark says he's considering taking his bullhorn and baseball bat to Washington to fight against drugs for the Bush administration. Actor James Caan became a big star in the 70s.
You're looking at the Broadway.
And it was just hours ago that Joe Clark stood outside here at the doorsteps to announce that he is taking a sabbatical, meaning he is leaving his position as principal of East High School. It is a 6-month paid sabbatical, but it remains in doubt whether Joe Clark will ever return to the job. He said he will be writing a book, and he's also talking to the Bush administration about joining that group in the fight against drugs. He also had some rather unkind words this morning. Jim Ryan had them for you just a few moments ago for the Patterson City Council, specifically 2 council members whom he says framed him in that assembly. He thinks that that was set up to get rid of Joe Clark, to cause problems for them. For Joe Clark, that is, and Joe called 2 of the council members imps and dirty little rats. And that's the story this morning from Patterson, New Jersey.
$1 billion in city spending next year.
Principal Joe Clark says it's opportunity, not adversity, that has him leaving his job at Patterson's Eastside High School. Clark made it official today. He's taking a paid 6-month leave of absence, but he intends to stay busy. Clark is promoting Lean on Me, the film about his controversial efforts to improve his school. He also plans to write a book and says he might take a job with the Bush administration. Clark says his latest trouble with the school board over a strip show performed during an assembly has nothing to do with his departure.
No, they can't run me out. I would never quit. And if I thought they even entertained that in their little damn pea brains, that will encourage me to remain here, because they can't run me out. They're nothing but a bunch of surreptitious dastards who have the unmitigated gall to get involved in something that they have no control of.
Well, Clark didn't say if he will return to Eastside High after his sabbatical.
That's about all he didn't say.
I know.
Ed Koch is embarking on a get-out.
The only high school principal to make the cover of Time magazine is back in the news again. Patterson's Joe Clark says he's stepping down from his post, perhaps for good. And as Trish DeGasperis reports, you had to get up pretty early in the morning to cover the story.
There aren't many who could call a news conference at dawn and expect anyone to attend, but Joe Clark did, and everyone attended. On the steps of Eastside High School, the verbose principal declared,
"My heart didn't palpitate today for the first time in 7 years."
The reason for that lack of palpitation was that the embattled principal was finally tired of battling the Board of Education. He announced his departure at the end of the school year, leaving open-ended whether it would be temporary or permanent.
My soul is tired from the vicissitudes of a system that has no cognizance of what is necessary if we are to save our cities and our schools.
This latest fight comes on the heels of Clark's suspension by the school board for arranging an assembly program featuring strippers. Clark was out of town the day of the performance and said he had no idea that the dancers he hired did more than dance. Clark says the real reason the school board hates him is because he's gotten so much publicity. And the recent hit movie Lean on Me, based on Clark, was the last straw. While detractors say he's a publicity-hungry egomaniac who has exploited his students, every student we spoke with today felt differently.
He's the best principal in Patterson, so I mean, you know, he shouldn't leave.
If he leaves, I'm leaving too. That's it. Without him, this school is nothing.
Because if he leaves school and turn back to how it used to be.
Which was?
Messed up school, a disaster. He should stay. He gonna stay though. He ain't gonna leave because he love us.
The prolific principal says he's talking to the Bush administration about a job. Meanwhile, he says that taking a leave from this job is causing him anguish.
It's a very, very difficult thing to do. One of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my ancient life.
Trish DeGasperis, New Jersey Network News, Patterson.
And coming up, a new...
He is back from suspension, but he isn't going to be there for long. We're talking about Joe Clark, the controversial principal of Patterson, New Jersey's Eastside High School. Now, he was suspended following a school assembly where there were male strippers. He went back to school bright and early this morning to say that he's leaving the school and going on sabbatical. Our New Jersey Bureau Chief, Jay Scott, was there for the 6 a.m. announcement.
Joe Clark was back on the job early, and so were reporters called out for a full-scale 6 a.m. news conference. It was vintage Joe Clark, fighting mad and claiming he was set up.
No, I don't know. I might go in my office now and find 900 vials of crack. I don't know what the hell is going on around here. I'm scared as hell.
Before revealing he'd be taking a paid 6-month sabbatical in September, Clark blasted members of the Patterson City Council as, quote, dastards. That's with a D that he blamed for his suspension. He says he was suspended unfairly after an incident in which male strippers performed inside the school while he was away. He said today the show was inappropriate, but there hasn't been a single complaint from a single parent. And it's jealousy that's motivating his political enemies.
People love success, but they hate successful people. And I found that this has seemed to exacerbate the ill wills of so many people. The movie, the book, my speaking engagements, and my receptance by the American populace.
Most students simply could not believe Clark would be leaving.
Oh, that's a shame. I don't think Joe Clark should leave because he did a good deed for the school.
But some former Eastside employees say Clark will not be missed at the school.
It was run more like a dictatorship. People were living in fear. They knew if they ever went against the man, that he would take measures and have him probably eliminated.
So some people would be happy to see him go?
I believe so.
But Clark took credit today for cleaning up the school's drug problem and said he has already started negotiating for a job in Washington. Whatever Joe Clark's future holds, it's obvious he would like to work with drug czar William Bennett. He's so interested, in fact, that he said today he'd be willing to tone down his, quote, flamboyance just to prove to the Bush administration that he, too, can be a team player. Reporting from Patterson, New Jersey, Jay Scott, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Joe Clark may be on his way out, but he says there is work yet to be done. He says he's going to try to demote or fire 2 school staffers before he leaves. He blames them for the assembly strippers that earned Clark his suspension. Russ?
At Manhattan City Hall.
It's a quitter, and I don't want that to ever happen. More important than that, I don't want those little lemmings to ever think that they ran Joe Clark out of town.
Well, Clark says he might write a book. He might even take a job with the Reagan administration, and he is still busy promoting Lean on Me, the movie inspired by his story.
The tough guy principal who made a name for himself with a bullhorn and a baseball bat has decided to take a break. Eastside High's Joe Clark from Patterson today announced that he will go on a 6-month sabbatical. However, as Channel 2's Jane Tillman Irving reports, Clark says he might decide not to come back.
Not all politicians.
Principal Joe Clark was a bit wistful this morning outside Eastside High School in Patterson.
It's hard for me to walk away from here. Given too much. 7 years, no vacation.
Clark is taking a paid 6-month sabbatical starting in September. He says he'll write a book and possibly work in the Bush administration with his old friend, former Education Secretary William Bennett.
The details of it, I do not know. As I stated before,